What is up, Need for Speed Racers? It is I, your wheelman, Alex Cornnut. I'm here today with the A-Class top 5 most meta, fastest cars in the class, so that way you can have any car you want out of this list and go as fast as you possibly can. I've got drift and grip in front of us, so that way if your style is drift, we got you taken care of. If you run the gripium like myself, I've got you set as well. There's a couple cars on this list that might surprise, and there's a couple that we knew would be here for sure. But all the builds are solid. They are all current. Nothing is changing for Volume 4. So honestly, this is the meta, and I don't see it changing for a while. So dig into it, get it in your garage, and let's go. Full disclosure, you guys, SlideQT holds all but one record in the A-Class for our crew records. Some of those are world records. And so that being the case, I'm going to bring you all of his builds in addition to my gripium builds, so that way you're good to go. The first car that we are going to start with is the 180SX. It holds half of SlideQT's records. So if you're a drifter, this is the setup you want to use. Our friend Liner, he runs a really crazy time in this exact setup, which is a world record. And so there's multiple guys using this build. Slide's got it tuned up. It's perfect. So let me bring it to you. The engine that you're going to use is the 5th engine over, so we count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That is the 2.0 liter inline 4 306 brake horsepower sport bronze engine. Make sure that it's the 306, not the 366, or one of the other 2.0s, which is the 247, or the one before that, which is the 202. There's a bunch of different inline 4s, so make sure you do the 5th engine, 306 brake horsepower, 2.0 liter inline 4. That's the only one that gets it done like this, so make sure you grab the right one. I've had people in the videos before like, oh, I'm having problems, it goes to the wrong class. It's because you guys aren't buying the right engine most of the time, so focus there, you guys. For the parts, really easy. First 4, it's stock, sport bronze across the board, so you're running sport bronze induction, sport bronze ECU, sport bronze fuel system, and sport bronze exhaust. You can't go any lower, it comes stock that way, so don't touch those. You're going to mate that setup to the super gold screw supercharger. We can't do a higher forced induction on this one. Anything in the platinum range takes us right out of the class, so make sure you guys are running the super gold screw. That's what Slide runs, and it's a banger. Sport bronze nitrous, as we do. Elite platinum road suspension, silver pro brakes, and you're gonna run elite platinum tires. Regular old tires, the very first one in the elite platinum set. Don't go with the drifts or the roads. They both take you out of the class, and honestly, SlideQT says the regular tires are perfection in this setup, and we've got the lap times to match, so we trust. Go with the regular tires, iron basic clutch, and you're gonna run the sport bronze 5-speed transmission. It's the one, that's the way it goes. The regular 4-speed brings you down so much in top speed, it is not worth. So sport bronze 5-speed. Elite platinum diff, that way you can get the most out of your handling slider. And guys, make sure you pay attention to the handling, it is important on this one, I'll show you in a moment. Auxiliary for anybody that's racing competitively is nitrous drift, nitrous grip, that way you can micro drift, because that's what you need. The handling, slide the slider to the right, 80% all the way, hold it over and just run it. 80% drift, you guys. Steering sensitivity, SlideQT runs this setup all the way low. So take it as far to the left as you can, and that'll match what Slide does, but that is a preference thing, so you guys do whatever you think is necessary. Downforce, this is omega important. There's one slot where this fits, and it's right where you see before us. It's 3 clicks to the right, so from the center we go 1, 2, 3. That is a 209. Anywhere else in the downforce range is out of the class. It goes to A+. So make sure you click 3 clicks to the right from center. So center, 1, 2, 3, A209. That's the sweet spot. Make sure you do this. It's crucial. Otherwise, it doesn't fit. There's always a handful of people that have problems because they don't get this far. So please, I told you. Traction control is off. Drift entry is gas tap. That is what SlideQT runs. This is the Nissan 180SX Type X in A-Class. 163 top speed, it'll get there, but it accelerates really, really hard, especially if you're drifting it. So for those reasons, it is very competitive in the A-Class. 352 for your horsepower, and 377 for your torque. This is a banger. It holds about half the crew records in the A class. Let me show you what the other half are held by. Our Lord and Savior Testarossa, of course that's in this list. The car is incredibly cracked at A+ for sure. So we're going to dig into it. I'm going to show you the drift build first. This is what the other half of the records are held by Slide, and then I'll show you the Grippium version, which I run myself. So digging into that, guys, the engine that you're going to use in the Testarossa is the 4.0 liter V8, 414 brake horsepower when we start. That is the Sport Bronze V8. It is the third engine over. For the parts, you're running Silver Pro induction, Sport Bronze ECU, Super Gold fuel system, Sport Bronze exhaust, and you are going to run it naturally aspirated for your drift build. This matches what Slide runs. The grip build is different, so if you guys are looking for that, stay tuned. But if you're looking to drift it, this is a direct match to what he holds all the records with, so that's where we're at, you guys. Sport Bronze nitrous, Elite Platinum road suspension, Sport Bronze brakes, Elite Platinum drift tires, Sport Bronze clutch, and then you were going to run the Sport Bronze 4-speed transmission. We run that in most of the Testarossa builds. It's the way to go. It still does over 170. Elite Platinum differential, that way you can get the most out of the slider. And then auxiliaries, they're not changing, you guys. That's nitrous drift and nitrous grip. For the handling, slide the slider all the way to the right. That is 40% drift in this setup. Steering sensitivity, I run 2 clicks high. That's personal preference. Slide runs it on the low end of things with this car. So set that steering sense wherever you can make it work for yourself. Downforce, run it all the way high, back it off 2. That is A209. Anything less than that is A+ 210. So the last 2 clicks is A209. So one of those 2 spots, but I back it off 2 because that's the least amount of downforce that you can put in it and still keep it in the class. It gives you the most on the top end. Traction control is off, and drift entry is brake tap. This is SlideQT's setup for all of his crew setting, some world record setting runs in the drift edition of the Testarossa. 172 is the top speed. It'll do a little better than that with Redline Tech. 481 for the horsepower and 338 for the torque. With the NA, it has a little less torque, but you really don't need it because you're drifting in and boosting out, and it's a very, very fast way to go. Guys, it's a hard technique, but it is holding the crew records down. So if you're looking for that drift setup, this is it. Let me show you what we've got for grip. The grip build for the Testarossa is very, very sturdy. It's what I use. It's very competitive. So if you're not a drifter, this is the one you need to have in your garage. It really hasn't changed from Volume 2, but there's a lot of you guys that don't go back that far on the channel, so let me get you up to date with the banger of the Rossa. The engine that you use is the same one as the drift build. It is the 4.0 liter V8, 414 brake horsepower when we start. And we add a few parts from there. That is going to be the 5th engine over, you guys. Excuse me, 3rd engine over. 3rd engine. 1, 2, 3. 414 brake horsepower, Sport Bronze. Make sure you grab that one, you guys. For the parts, you're running Silver Pro induction. You're running Sport Bronze ECU, Sport Bronze fuel system, Sport Bronze exhaust, and a Sport Bronze single turbo. This is very important that you put that single turbo in there because it gives you the most on the top end, which makes this one of the fastest cars in A class. Fastest for top speed for sure, and it's very competitive for that reason. So make sure you slam in that single turbo. We try to build with the roots, but you lose a lot on the top end and you really don't gain that much on the low end. You'll see that it's got the exact same amount of torque, but we're sacrificing horsepower for that. So it's not worth. Single turbo is where it's at, you guys. Sport Bronze bottle of NOS. Elite Platinum road suspension, Sport Bronze brakes, Elite Platinum grip tires, because we do grip and rip with this build, Sport Bronze clutch, and then you're going to run the Sport Bronze 4-speed transmission. Elite Platinum diff if you want, but you guys can get away with just the Sport Bronze diff. As long as you can get 100% on that handling slider, that's what you need. The gold auxiliaries, they don't change, you guys. So nitrous drift, nitrous grip, that's going to remain the same for all the builds. Handling slider, full Beyonce on this one. To the left, slide that slider 100% to the grip side of things, to the left. Steering sensitivity, I run 2 clicks high. That's my preference for this car. You guys do whatever you want. Downforce all the way low. Turn it all the way down so that way you can get the most on the top end, get the most out of the overall top speed of the car. This will do like 175 with Redline Tech, which is faster than a lot of A+ cars. So it really goes really hard, you guys. Traction control is off, and drift entry we run brake tap. That is going to be the Gripium Testarossa in A-Class. 172 for the top speed. It'll Redline Tech higher than that. 480 for your horsepower and 328 for your torque. This is the car that I run when I'm running competitive races. This is a car I would recommend for all you guys if you're going to be running in the Copium tournament coming up. Make sure you have this in the garage. You're going to want it, and you really shouldn't. You need it, honestly. You need it. Let's move on to our next car in the class. This should be a surprise to no one that the RSR is very good in A-Class. I've got 2 builds for you. They are both Gripium, so if you're looking to slide this car, go grab the Rosa or the 180SX. They're much more competitive. But if you're a Gripium driver like myself, this is what you want. This car holds 1 record in A-Class for our crew, and Hex has got it, and it's this build right here. I'm going to bring it to you, and then I'm going to chase it and follow it up with a very specific cheese build that is really good on Millionaire Drive and some of the really short A-tracks. So let's get into it. Side note, I really like this livery. It's the Samurai livery, which if you guys have played Cyberpunk, you know what's good. Alright, the engine that we run in all of our RSR builds is the 2.2 liter inline 4, 121 brake horsepower when we start. The reason we run this motor is because it's got an outrageous amount of torque. It's a diesel engine, and it just gives you some crazy acceleration. When we could pre-shift with this car, meaning we could actually select what gear we wanted to launch the start of the race in, we'd launch this car in like 5th or 6th and just go. It was awesome. I dearly miss pre-shift. Just criteria on dev things. But anyway, guys, this engine is the 4th engine over, so you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 121 brake horsepower, 2.2 inline 4. Make sure you equip that engine. It's the only one that's really good. For the parts, you are running Sport, Bronze, Induction, Elite, nothing. Basic, Iron, ECU, Super Gold fuel system, and Super Gold exhaust. And you mate that up with the Elite Platinum twin turbos. The reason we go with the 20s is because it allows this car to actually have good on the top end. Redline Tech's a little better than if we were to put a supercharger in it, and overall it's a little easier to wrangle because you do have a lot of torque in this build. You can set it up. We've run builds that ran the screw and the roots, and neither one of those really got us where we wanted to be. And the 20s give you the most overall top speed out of the car, so it's kind of that perfect balance. Sport Bronze Nitrous, Elite Platinum road suspension, Super Gold brakes, and Elite Platinum grip tires. Right there, grip tires. And you're going to run the Iron Basic clutch and the Super Gold 7-speed transmission. This car was utterly dominant before they took away pre-shift. Now you got to kind of run through the gears, so it's a little bit slower overall for lap times, but it's still super, super good. Definitely something if you're a grip driver you want to have in the garage. It's a short track beast. Elite Platinum differential. You want to have the Elite Plat. That way you can get the most out of the grip side of things. Auxiliary is nitrous drift and nitrous grip, as we do on all the builds. Handling, slide that slider as far to Beyonce as we can possibly touch. That is 80%, so slide it to the left, to the left. Steering sensitivity 2 clicks high, that's me. Downforce all the way high. That's the only place that you can make it fit in the class, so make sure you run it all the way high, you guys. Traction control is off, and drift entry is brake tap. That is going to be the Porsche 911 Carrera RSR in A-Class 209 build. 141 for the top speed. It does just a skosh above that with Redline Tech, not too much. You are running 357 on your horsepower and 563 on your torque. Look at those numbers, because in a second I'm going to show you the 195 build and you'll see the differences. But that 195 build only does 130, and so for that reason it's only good on a couple of tracks. But if you're going to be racing competitively, it might be something you want to have in the garage. Let me show that to you now. before us, we have the 195 build for A-Class. This is, by all definitions, a real cheese build. It's got a 130 top speed, which is that hard cap for B-Class, but with a few extra parts, we bring it up into A. You cannot look at this car with any additional performance parts, because if you bring it above that 130 mile per hour threshold, it takes it right out of the class. The reason for that is it's got 507 horsepower and 719 on the torque for A-Class. It is insane, but it only does 130 mile per hour. So like Millionaire Drive, this is the build, but it's really not competitive anywhere else because you launch and leave everybody at the start, but then they just walk you immediately because all their cars are 20, 30, 40, 50 mile an hour faster. So keep that in mind, you guys. But this does have a place in the class, and when I'm bringing you the meta, when I'm bringing you the best, this is one that you might keep in your garage just in case somebody throws Millionaire Drive at you, or a playlist that has that track. The engine that we run in this build is the 4th engine over. As always, it's our diesel RSR motor, 2.2 liter inline 4, 121 brake horsepower, and as you can see, we go crazy. For the parts, you're running gold for the first 4, so it's Super Gold Induction, Super Gold ECU, Super Gold Fuel System, and Super Gold Exhaust. You're going to pair that up with a Silver Pro Roots Supercharger. This combination and configuration gets you the most horsepower that gives you essentially the best acceleration. The reason we do all of that is because look, if we just look at it, let me just pretend I was going to put an Elite Platinum intake on it. We go right to S. This is an S car in A-Class. It is insane. It jumps all of A+. And all we're doing is adding roughly 11 mile an hour to it. So guys, that's the deal. That's what it is. This car is about. Like, you add just a few horsepower and a few mile an hour and it takes this car right to S. It's a cracked car, but because it's a 195 build because of the transmission, we have a lot of extra points to play with. So for that reason, you get to put Elite Platinum Nitrous, Elite Platinum Road Suspension, Elite Platinum Brakes because we got extra points, Elite Platinum Grip Tires, and an Elite Platinum Clutch. And you mate all of that to the Sport Bronze 4-speed transmission. This is the only build with the RSR that we run that 4-speed. All the rest you want to have the 7. But we tried every combination of parts on this car, and like I say, if you breathe on it with any different transmission, we go right to S. And if you decide to throw the Super in it, like, it's almost S+. That gives you an idea of where this car's horsepower and torque figures really would land it if it had a real transmission in it. This car is crazy cracked, and we've got it all the way down in A-Class. So that's how you set it up, you guys. Make sure you run that 4-speed, and then also make sure you put in that Elite Platinum differential. Auxiliary nitrous grip, nitrous drift, get those micro drifts as we do. Handling, slide that slider all the way to the left, 80% grip. Steering sensitivity 2 clicks high. Downforce all the way high. You can run it all the way low. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't change the way this car performs. So I run it on the high side so that way I can get the most out of the grip levels with it. Traction control is off, and drift entry is brake tap. This is the Cheese 195 RSR. You might have heard it referred to it as the 195 car. That's this build. It's only useful on a couple of tracks. It's got to be the corner kings. It's got to be the short tracks. It's got to be tracks where you're not going to get walked by cars that are actually hitting their top speeds, because you will lose. You'll out accelerate them at the start, and then they wave goodbye. But if you're going to get a playlist pulled on you that's got Millionaire Drive in it, you might switch to this car for that track, because you will absolutely decimate your opponents. 130 for that top speed, 507 for the horsepower, and 719 for your torque. Let's move on to the next car in our lineup. The Legends M3 GTR is actually very good at A-Class. There's a grip and a drift version. I have them both for you. The reason this car is special is because it is a hero car. When I put that in quotes, because that is what it's listed as in the game files. There's 2 hero cars in the game, the M3 GTR Legends and the ASAP Rocky 190E. Both of those cars have different downforce modifiers, different ways they interact with the overall game environment. They can do far more with way less horsepower than all the other cars in the game. And so because it's a hero car, it's special, it's coded special, and it just can do things that it really shouldn't if we base it upon everything else in the game. So for that reason, it's really good at A+ and A. And so I'm going to show you that right now at A class. This is the grip build, drift version to come. The performance for this car, you are going to run the 4.0 liter V8. That is the Sport Bronze 474 brake horsepower engine. So it's the second engine over, and we actually take a little bit out of that engine from stock to make it fit in the class. So even though it says 474, when you guys select that engine, it's not going to fit. I'm going to show you how to make it fit. For the parts, you're running Silver Pro induction, Sport Bronze ECU, Sport Bronze fuel system, and Sport Bronze exhaust. And you're going to pair all of that up to the Sport Bronze Roots supercharger. It's incredible how this game works and how we can do things with it. The Roots supercharger makes it fit. It's perfect, so make that go, you guys. You're going to run the Sport Bronze Nitrous, Elite Platinum Road suspension, Silver Pro brakes, and Elite Platinum grip tires. The Gripium is the way to go for this build, and it's a very good handling, very good turning, very good accelerating car. It doesn't hold any records, and that's because the Testarossa and the Drift 180SX exist. Take those out of the mix, and this becomes super viable. This is definitely third or fourth in line for being incredibly competitive. If you have this car in your garage, if you have access to it, you need to build it out. I think it'll surprise you. And if you've paid for it and you pull this out against somebody in a competitive format, you might have something they don't, so it could give you an edge. Sport Bronze clutch, and really it doesn't matter because it shifts just fine because you are only putting in the Sport Bronze 5-speed transmission. Elite Platinum differential, you don't need to have it. You can get away with just the Sport Bronze diff because we're only going 80% grip. It does not fit in the class with any additional grip put on it, and really it still handles like a dream just with 80%. For the handling slider, like I've just discussed with you, you're going to run that slider to the left and then back it off to 80% grip. That's the only way to get 209 out of the car. Steering sensitivity, 2 clicks high, that's me. Downforce all the way high, that's where I'm running this. It feels really good there. There's nowhere else you can put it, so just make sure you run that downforce all the way high, you guys. Traction control off, and drift entry is brake or gas tap, whatever. I run brake tap, but you guys do you. It's fine. That is going to be the A-Class 209 BMW M3 GTR Legends Edition. 391 for your horsepower and 302 for your torque. Those stats seem low, but it doesn't perform like that. It almost performs like you've got double that power, honestly. It's really very good. 154 for your top speed, so it's going to walk your RSR. It's going to keep up with the 180SX, but in the speed races, it's still going to get walked away by the Lord and Savior Testarossa because that car is just crazy fast. Let me show you the drift version of the M3 Legends. The drift version of the Legends is exactly what you would expect. Very good. This is SlideQT's setup. He thinks it's super competitive, and I've seen him run it, and it is very, very competitive. So if you're trying to pull out something different than the Rossa or the RSR or the 180SX, I think this is definitely one to have in the garage. Not everybody's going to have it. If you guys don't, I'm sorry. That's just how it works, but I'm bringing you the meta right now in this video, and I'm not going to ignore a car just because not everybody has it. So sucks if you don't. I apologize, but it's just how our wonderful Criterion developers decided to run things. EA on top. All right, the engine that we're running, you guys, is the second engine over. It is the 4.0 liter V8, 474 brake horsepower when we start. For the parts, you're running Sport Bronze induction, Sport Bronze ECU, Sport Bronze fuel system, and Silver Pro exhaust. And then you mate that once again to the Sport Bronze Roots supercharger. Sport Bronze bottle of NOS, Elite Platinum Road suspension, Silver Pro brakes, and Elite Platinum road tires. Not the drifts, not the grips, not the regulars, but the roads. So make sure you put those on there, you guys. SlideQT says it drifts perfect with that, so it's a decent setup. Sport Bronze clutch, and you're still going to run that Sport Bronze 5-speed transmission. Elite Platinum differential, you absolutely need that for the drift build because you can only get 40% drift, so get the most out of the slider that you can, and that's with these tires. So you can get a little more with the drift tires, but Slide says run it with the road, so that's what we do. Auxiliary, nitrous grip, nitrous drift, as we do, micro drifting all day long. Handling slider, slide it as far to the right as you can get it. That is 40% drift on this setup. Steering sensitivity, I run 2 clicks high. SlideQT likes it down in the low end of things. So that's personal preference. Go with what you guys do. Downforce, go all the way low, back it off 2. That is a 209. That's the sweet spot. That's where it goes. It's the lowest amount of downforce you can get on the car and still make it fit in the class. Traction control is off, and then drift entry is gas tap if you're SlideQT, or gas and brake tap if you're myself. But that's personal preference, you guys, so set it up for whatever you can make it work. That is the Legends Edition drift car. 155 top speed, 396 for the horsepower, and 305 for the torque. When you slide the slider further to the drift side of things, you can add a little more horsepower, so that's why it's going to perform a little better than the grip version, but both are still very viable. Let me bring you the last car in the A class and wrap up our video. And the last car on the list is the Porsche GT4. It is a rumble build because I don't want to ignore you rumble players out there. I know that there's only like 4 of you and you probably don't watch the videos, but anyway, here it is. This car can be used for either rumble or regular. All you do is swap out the tires and the suspension, so you can cheese it out and make it a road car. But we've been sitting on this one for a while, and if somebody pulls out a rumble playlist on you, maybe this is worth having in the garage. The engine that you run in this build is the very first engine over. It is the 4.3 liter V8 iron basic 162 brake horsepower when we start, and we go up a lot. The parts is Elite Platinum induction, Sport Bronze ECU, Sport Bronze fuel system, and Elite Platinum exhaust with an Elite Platinum screw supercharger. Elite Platinum bottle and NOS. Elite Platinum off-road suspension. You can run the off-roads for rumble, or you can do the regular road for gripping and ripping. Maybe an alternative to Millionaire Drive if you don't want to run the RSR. Elite Platinum brakes, because we had extra points, because we have a 130 cap top speed. And then once again, it's Elite Platinum off-road tires for rumble, or regular road tires or grip tires for just regular racing for like Millionaire Drive. So throw the grippers on there and you'll see what's up. Elite Platinum clutch. And then you were going to run the Sport Bronze 5-speed transmission. It allows us to bring that overall top speed down to 130 and keep it in the class, even though it's got ludicrous horsepower and torque. Elite Platinum differential, that's what I run on here. But you guys, if you are running the road setup, you can do a Sport Bronze. If you're running the off-road rumble setup, grab the Elite, so that way you have more of the handling slider. But once you guys get to this point, that's kind of preference thing. Auxiliary, nitrous drift, nitrous grip. If you're doing rumble, you might do nitrous jump, because there's a lot of jumps in those playlists. So if you're optimizing and min-maxing, you might consider that. Handling, slide the slider all the way to the left, 100% grip as we do. Steering sensitivity, I'm 3 clicks high on this one because that's what the car felt good when I was running it back in the day on the rumble playlist. And downforce is all the way high, but guys, you can run it all the way low as well. But when we were jumping and flying around, all the way high felt better to me. Traction control is off and drift entry is brake tap. That is going to give you the Porsche Cayman GT4 in A class, 130 top speed, 644 for your horsepower, and 789 for your torque. This car is a little heavier than the RSR, so it doesn't perform at quite the same level, but you do get to pack in an Elite clutch with Elite NOS, kind of like the 195 build, so this it'll trade blows with it, so it's really a preference thing. If it was me, I'd run the RSR 209 build and then run the 199 this car as my cheese build, so you guys do whatever you feel. Set it up any way you want, it's pretty solid, but like I say, once again, you guys, if you throw on any other parts, take it out of the class, so you go fuel system tier up 1, it's an S car, S299 with this setup, so just by changing one performance part, we go right out of the class, and that makes the cheese. But we are so far into the game, and with tournaments coming, I don't want any of these builds to be slept on. I don't want anybody that's going to be running my Copium tournament or future tournaments to come to not have every car in their arsenal, because there's a lot of guys in my crew that have already got these cars. And so if you're a new player coming to the game, I don't want somebody to pull this out on you and you be surprised. I'd rather we all have the exact same cars to pull from, and then at least it's driver mod and not, oh, I didn't know that car exists. So the information's out here. It's here for you, and I'm happy to bring it to you guys. That's going to do it for the A-Class wrap-up. A lot of builds here, a lot of different ways you can go, but all of these cars are cracked and incredibly meta. So if you don't have them yet, get on it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't. What are you doing? You sleeping on the channel? You don't do that. Hook it up. Help me out. I appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.